Oh, wait a minute, it's going to show this time.
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay. Well, this is Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock in Thailand, and that in the UK it's probably, 10 or 11 in the morning. And I think that it's right at the end of April. This is the 30th of April. Yeah, that's what it is, the 30th of April. And Andre has just asked a question about the 10 fetters. Andre, where did you hear about the 10 fetters other than just reading it out of some old book someplace? Have you had any other experience? How about in Dhammasala? Did they ever talk about the fetters at Dhammasala?
Actually, no, I haven't heard any talks given there about the fetters, but I did come across in different analogies and sort of metaphors for different progressions and different stages of Sotapanna and Sakadagami and all those things that kind of fetter based. And to me, it made a lot of sense how that's actually the only way, well, or one of the ways we can tell any sort of like we're moving in the right direction, that these fetters are loosening their grip or they disappear completely. But yeah, I heard it from a lot of different sources, and it's always interesting to see what it actually means, from different sources.
Well, first off, the Pali word is for what you're using the word fetter is kilesa, and there's another Pali word that's used called asava. And asava and kilesa are used kind of interchangeably in this context, but they have different actual meanings. The word kilesa that is translated as fetter actually means like fettering a bird by tying it to a vine or to a string. Okay, or you would fetter an elephant by pounding a tree deep into the ground and then having very strong ropes made of vines to hold him down. Almost always they will fetter the left hind foot, because the right foot is, most most elephants in the time of the Buddha were right-footed, just like we are in nowadays, and so they would always fetter or tether the left hind foot. So this is where that word comes from. The word asava has more to do with the quality of a pox or a canker or a blackhead or a pimple or a skin abrasion, maybe a cyst, a lymphoma. That kind of thing is what the asava means. And they can be used in some cases interchangeably. For instance, the word asava is used in the sutta number 2, Sabha Asava Sutta. I mean, that's the name of the sutta, and yet it's got the first 3 fetters is the point of the first section of it. Okay, and in fact, that's an important point. The fetters are actually the method by which the students will remove the situation called the second noble truth, or the cause of suffering. Okay, we have greed, ill will, and ignorance. And what we really understand later is that list is backwards. I don't even know why it came that way. Maybe it's because the bottom line is ignorance, because that's the really important one. And so in the Sabha Asava Sutta, it starts off with knowledge. Okay, the first asava that has to be dealt with is one of seeing. And in that sutta, it talks about who I was in the past, who I was in the future, who I'm going to be. It also has the various views of self in the sense of no self knows the self. The self knows the no self. The self knows the self. The no self knows the no self. I mean, this is kind of mind twisting stuff that the Brahmins would get into, which doesn't mean anything. And these are all referred to in this sutta as um, unappropriate ways of paying attention. And it's also, in this regard, called a thicket of views. And what is wise attention is such that things improve or are springing up and being developed, to where unwise attention is when things get worse and good things don't get started. And so after that, then it talks about, well, what is worthy of our attention? What is wise attention? And the expression goes along with it, and I'll use the new one that I've just learned. This is dukkha. Okay? This is dukkha. And this is what we mean by the cause of dukkha. And this is the end of dukkha, and then we have the method or the way to reach that, okay? So, this is dukkha. This is the cause of dukkha, is what this really is all about. And because this is the cause of dukkha, there is a way of stop that causation, to stop conditioning things. And when things are unconditioned, they settle down. Just like the engine will cause the rear tires to run because the engine has gasoline. When it runs out of gas, now the engine is no longer the asset. It becomes a liability, and the car comes to a stop because it's unconditioned. The wheels stop running because they're unconditioned by the engine, and the engine is unconditioned without the gasoline. So this is what we mean by conditioning. Okay, and so when we can see the conditioning, when we can see the causation, what is the cause of the suffering, which is these three things: greed, ill will, and ignorance, then because we can see through understanding and practicing the Eightfold Noble Path and coming out of it, we then come to three understandings, and that is personality view, clinging to rites, rules, and rituals, and the elimination of doubt. Now, I have just given you the three asavas that are listed in that sutta, but these are also the first three fetters. And it is normally referred to in, let us say, low-class, ordinary, widespread Buddhism, that the ending of these three fetters is the determination of what makes one a sotapan. Have you ever heard of the word sotapan before? Okay, do you know what it means? Other than the silly translation of stream enterer. It's more like jumping into the flood. So the stream entry means that we become completely immersed in the Dhamma. We don't care about anything other than the Dhamma. Once the doubt about the Dhamma, what is the Dhamma and what is not the Dhamma, we're pretty secure into it. It's really life-changing. It literally shanghais you. You're drafted. You gotta go, except that this is, it's almost a mandatory thing. And so one of the ways of looking at it, if you understand this way of looking, is that one who is ordained is probably close to being a sotapan. I mean, why would he ordain if he didn't care enough about the Dhamma to change his whole life? So just because he's in the robes, that's a pretty good guess that he's on that path. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons for people to ordain in Thailand. hiding from the law, doing what mom told you to do, that kind of thing. But that almost never happens with Westerners. And so almost all the Westerners that you ever meet, you got to give them credit for the fact that they've actually cared enough about the Dhamma to ordain, even if they don't even understand the Dhamma yet. They care enough about it. Okay? So the real Sotapan, though, back to these fetters, is that we can see that the second fetter and the third and the first fetter are intertwined, they're interrelated, in the sense of who you are is based upon who you were supposed to be. You picked up a lot of rites, rules, and rituals along the way when you were a child to define who we are. And so we're supposed to live up to the standards of who we are. And so who we are is based upon a set of rules. But that's also the base of where all of our suffering comes from, in the sense that we either have the rule and rebel against it, or we have the rule and we try and we fail at it because the rule's too high a bar, that our standards are set too high. And in other cases, there are no standards and we just go screwing around because we don't have any standards at all, and messing up that way. So the definition of who I am really has another kind of component to it. And that is that if we think that who we are is who we are, that we've got some sort of destiny, or that it's extraordinarily difficult to change, then people don't make much progress, if at any. That in fact, you can see in some cases that the job of cleaning out the past is a pretty big job, but we can do it. But then you add rebirth to that, and now I have to clean out the junk through how many thousands of lives in the past that have determined who I am? And that makes it such a big, daunting kind of thing. But even if people believe in rebirth and reincarnation, they kind of throw it aside because it's irrelevant anyway, and decide that they can change. That we do not have to go the way that we're going, that we can change. This is really a big, important point about a change model, because the normal personality is, I can't change. I've got a destiny. I'm not supposed to change. I can't do it. And in fact, religions make a big point of it, that you can't change. Who are you to be good? Only God is good. You need a Jesus because you can't do it yourself. You've got this big burden of all of this past and all of this future, and somehow or another it's determined by outside forces anyway. A God, or gods, or maybe a karma machine, or something out there that is controlling our lives and controlling our existence. This is part of personality view, which basically the responsible one, the authority, is just part of the superego anyway. It's just how high up into the mind does it go, but it's still the guy who sets the rules. And the reality is no, we're the ones who set the rules. We picked them up when we were kids. There's nobody up there setting the rules for us. That the rules that we set for ourselves, we got from our parents. But there is nothing inherently actually real in the sense of good or bad. Good and bad are all a matter of opinion. There's some ones that are universal, like I don't want to have my arm broken, but arms get broken in fights. So during those moments, that's a good thing. You've got a broken arm. Now you can't hurt me with it. Okay, so goods and bads, they're not set. But we try to set them. We try to determine what's good and bad, what's right or wrong, and that limits us. This is the Sila Bhatta Paramasa, is the decisions or the criteria upon which we set bars and set standards. And the Buddha has a particular one that we can throw out all of the rites, rules, rituals, laws, ways of doing things, all the society and all of that kind of stuff, and take on one new rule that tends to work. In fact, it's just a little rule. It's an easy rule. It's the rule that actually defines the entire teachings of the Buddha. And that is the rule, the standard that we're going to live by is dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. That's the new standard. Okay, and so we can throw the fetter of all of those rules out. Well, when we have just one rule, dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, then that means that the set of rules don't define who you are anymore. You become much more natural. That you're a moving target. You're constantly in motion. There's no fixed you there anymore because the rules were what defined you. The box that you were in was just merely a cage. And when you take the cage down, then you've got freedom. Okay, so let's look at doubt for a moment, because doubt is the third fetter, and we need to really understand what it is. That in fact, there's various levels of doubt, that some of them we had to get over to get where we are. You could say, in fact, that the three fetters, that third one of doubt, actually is overlaid with the first fetter and the second fetter. So the way that it goes is, in the beginning, the question is, the doubtful question is, who can I get to fix me? Because I'm broken, I'm a victim, I need a God, nope, that don't work. I need a teacher, nope, that didn't work. I need a mommy, I need a nanny, I need a bottle to drink, I need a drug to take, I need in order to feel good. This is the first doubt that we have. What can I do to feel good? Guess what? There's nothing out there that's ever going to do that. And we have to come then to the conclusion of that doubt is nothing. There ain't no help. I'm going to have to do it myself. That's kind of terrifying for some people. In fact, that's the second level of doubt. Because the first level of doubt is actually coming out of the Sila Bhatta Paramasa. We've got to have a rule saying somebody's responsible here for my mess. And guess what? There's no rule specifying who's responsible for your mess other than you. And so the second fetter is, how can I get out of this? Or a more important question is not how so much, because that's the third fetter, but rather, can I? Am I capable of getting out of it? And this is when real practice starts. That people who have that first doubt, they're not practicing. They're out looking for somebody to do their meditation practice for them. Maybe they can go to a retreat, pay big bucks, and then the retreat center will do the meditation for them. And they don't have to do anything. They just pay the money. Same thing happens with psychologists. Oh, I paid the psychologist $300 an hour, hour after hour. It's his job. You know, I paid him. He's got to do his thing. I paid for my therapy, and I expect results. So you can hear that first fetter deeply embedded with that. And people have to get past that before they can ever come to the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha is actually all about these four noble truths. And that second one is, hey, buddy, this greed, ill will, and delusion is all yours all the time. An example of that, by the way, is that, you know, in 2004, there was a huge tsunami out in the Adriatic or Indian Ocean, and that Phuket just almost got washed away. Literally thousands of foreigners were in it. But the surprise is that hours before the tsunami happened, the elephants in Phuket all headed for the hills. One of them in particular was already up in the hills, and his trainer, his Manut, was bringing him down the hill back to the quarters, and that elephant would not go. He would not go down the hill. And this trainer was working for hours trying to get this elephant to go down the hill, and guess what? Here comes all of the other elephants up the hill. This is, by the way, is on a video that I've seen. And behind all of those elephants were all of the trainers trying to catch up and find the elephants, because the elephants had all busted down their stalls and left. This is very interesting. How did the elephants know that a tsunami was coming? How did they know that? Probably the answer is that they were sensitive and barefoot enough that they heard the ground rumble, and they say, "I'm out of here." But the people could have possibly felt the same thing, and they didn't notice it. They weren't paying attention. So this is basically what we're talking about in the sense of ignorance, is that we're not watching. So the question is, all of those Farang who got injured due to the tsunami, was it in fact due to their ignorance, or did God do it to them? What do you think, Laurent? Is there something magical? I mean, the tsunami got a whole bunch of people that must be really powerful, like a god would, cause an earthquake. Who's responsible for all of those people who got hurt?
Probably lack of how do you say? Ignorance, I'd say.
Yes, okay, so the problem was each one's ignorance. Okay, so now let's go back to the Sabha Asava Sutta to see, in fact, that that's what it's working with. That when we can see through personality view and see through all of our rites, rules, and rituals, then we come to the point of saying, hey, I can do this myself. And that's where we practice. In fact, by having the concept or the idea, I can do it myself. And every one of you had that. I think you had that idea before you ever called me, any of you. You had the idea that I can do this. Most people don't. They can't. They're still looking for someone to do it for them, even though they know nobody's going to do it for them, but they still don't think that they can do it for themselves. But here everybody is at least hoping and thinking, you can do it yourself. Okay, so now we begin to practice correctly, and guess what? We can begin to feel satisfied. We can begin to practice correctly and get the results in it. And part of the benefit of that is the success goes up, and then that firms that point in that, yes, I can do this. It makes it strong. Yes, I can do this. And so that's that second layer of doubt that's erased. But along with that is the correct practice, is we also come to understand the knowledge and vision of what is the path, the Eightfold Noble Path, and what is not the path, everything else I've ever done. Everything else I've ever done didn't work. It didn't make me happy, but the Eightfold Noble Path works. So let's stay with that. Okay, that's in fact, that doubt is what then puts that person on the spiritual path for sure, without a doubt, because they know without a doubt that the Eightfold Noble Path of the Buddha works. And yet so many of the Buddhist practices in the Western world don't even refer to the Eightfold Noble Path and how important it is. And yet there it is right there in the suttas, talking about you have to do these Four Noble Truths. You have to practice the Eightfold Noble Path to find out for sure that that's the right one. Because everybody's got doubts about, is this the right path? I mean, how many students have you talked to? In fact, how many different practices have you even tried, each one of you? Because you doubted. But now we're coming to one that works well enough that we don't doubt it anymore, that we know that it works. Cleaning out the mind and getting satisfied, and then getting that kind of wow sensation, working with the body, working with Anapanasati, is a system that works. And so this brings around then that third fetter, which is also known as the third knowledge. If that's the case, then in fact what I'm talking about now is I'm moving out of Sutta number 2 into Sutta number 48. And in Sutta number 48, it talks about there are, in fact, 7 knowledges that bring about the Sotapanna, not just the eradication of doubt, the knowledge and vision of actually what is correct, the path, and all of that stuff that's not. In fact, that particular quote comes out of Sutta number 24, which is a good companion for Sutta number 48. They both have 7 steps along the path. So the point then is that once we have laid that foundation of knowledge of the present moment, knowledge of being able to control the feelings, knowledge of being able to control our greed, to control our anger, not absolutely fully in control of it, but the knowledge that we in fact can do that. We've got the skills to do it. What are the skills? The Eightfold Noble Path skills. You know, we got to remember, we got to take a look, and we got to make a change, and we got to enjoy the change. So those are the points that bring the mind into the state of unification, and that unification of mind is available to the Sotapanna in but let's make a distinction so that we can understand. First off, there's 2 kinds of Sotapanna. In fact, this phrase, these 2 kinds, are well known and distributed. One is called the path of the Sotapanna, which is what we've been talking about, and then the fruit of the Sotapanna, which we haven't started talking about yet. So the Sabba Asava is only actually talking about the eradication of those fetters, but it's not the full Sotapanna yet. It's only the first step, the first path. That in fact you could go so far because of the way that the sutras are described as the actual first step, or the first actual point on the path, is when the student knows for sure, without a doubt, that he can come out of the obstructions, no matter what obstructions, no matter what hindrance, no matter what situation. He knows beyond a shadow of a doubt he can change his mind. Now, this is the first step of the Sotapanna. Okay, but it's not the full eradication of the doubt. He still has the doubt, but he knows, at least in this moment, he can clean out his mind. Later, he begins to understand that this has got to be the way of life. So now we come up to the 4th knowledge, and this is a doozy. This is one that I secretly teach on a regular basis, but I don't really mention it, but it's in the suttas, in the sense of, the way the sutta talks about it, is that the young monk goes to Patimokkha and makes a confession. And that the confession is so that by the time that the Patimokkha is to be read, there are only a Sangha of pure-minded people, because the young students, they're afraid to go to the assembly. But when you get up the guts to go to the assembly and actually confess your wrongdoing to a senior teacher or to a senior friend, someone that you trust, and you confess, you get it off our chest, whatever we've done wrong. Now, in our society, we're actually taught by our parents and all the other people to hide our wrongdoing. It's okay to do it, just don't get caught. Right? Here, if we can confess it, that means that we're willing to see it as dukkha and are willing to do something about it. So this is where the next step, in fact, this is the midpoint now between the path of the Sotapanna into the fruit of the Sotapanna. This is the balance point, is when you're willing to look at your wrongdoing, when you're willing to love yourself, warts and all, when you're willing to actually see what it is that needs to be fixed and do so in a loving, happy way. That it's okay to confess and get it off our chest with the idea that, hey, I don't have to do that anymore. It's painful. It's painful, even if nothing else, it's painful to get it off his chest. It's painful to be honest with ourselves. Because why? Because we're not living up to the rules and the standards that we made for ourselves. And so we begin then, this is where we begin to take down those real barriers that we learned about through knowledge, is now we're going to do something about it. We're going to see dukkha as it is and throw it out as dukkha nirodha, rather than harboring it and keeping it to ourselves and not willing to confess. And so this is part of the reason why it's really very quick path for those who are ordained and actually will practice this and to become honest and get stuff off the chest. It's liberating to carry around all of our troubles and all of our malfunctions and all of our upsets, all of our errors. We're human. We make mistakes. Can you forgive yourself? Can you get over it? This is that fourth item. This is a true knowledge. You can see how important this knowledge is, because without this, there's no next knowledge. We have to learn to take it as it comes real and accept reality as it is. This is kind of the end point of all the lies. After this stage, the dude doesn't lie much anymore. There's no reason to lie to anybody. I'd rather see the truth and get it over with and get it done. Be honest with it about it. Because I'll probably get caught lying later anyway, and then I'll make an enemy because he caught me lying. It's better to be truthful in the first place. So, the next step, step 5, then, is when the Dhamma itself becomes the guiding principle. The dukkha nirodha now is our way of life. And there's 2 examples in the sutras. One is that though the young monk is going about his monkly duties, like sweeping the hall or sweeping the pathway, still he's thinking about the Dhamma. The other example, here, kind of interesting one, is the cow has just calved, and she's got a brand new calf, several days old or so, and while she's eating grass, she's got one eye, they say, one eye on that calf. That calf is not out of her field of view. She's watching that calf. She's also stationing her body to where, like, the woods are way over there, and so she'll station her body between them. Any place that she perceives possible danger, she's going to get in the way of it to protect that infant. Okay, this is a way that we can also see as protecting ourselves by having that higher mind or that agent that I've talked about, or the frontal cortex or the adult in the room, is to wake up and let the adult take care and nurture the deep little child that we have inside, rather than being critical of the child, that we begin to nurture ourselves. Okay, so this is step 5, where the only thing that we care about is the Dhamma. And the feelings are always pleasant, nurturing, that kind of way. Now the 6th step is right on his heels sometimes. And the word here that's used is the word eager, enthusiastic. To become enthusiastic about the Dhamma. The only thing that we care about is the Dhamma. When we're reading books, let's read some Dhamma books. When we're watching videos, let's see what the monks are saying. This kind of thing, okay? We begin to get interested in the Pali. We're enthusiastic for the practice. It's working so well. I mean, look at all of the other steps up to this step 6. This is just almost there, because we've got nothing but enthusiasm for it. We're totally dedicated to the Dhamma. There's like nothing much else to do, but let's just go do another retreat, or let's just hang out at the water. Let's just, sit here and do nothing. That's probably the best thing. Just to sit down and do nothing and enjoy the heck out of it. And that's the next step. enjoying the heck out of it. This is actually step 7. The word that's used are words in the Pali like rato and nandi and that kind of word, which has to do with the quality of delight. That we see things in the sense of being surprised at how beautiful it is, surprised at how wonderful the Dhamma is. I mean, this stuff works. And we have that delightful kind of, wow, this is so good. And these are the 7 knowledges that finally, profoundly put a student to the point of being the fruit of the sotapan. And what is the fruit of the sotapan? Being delightful, being delighted, being enthusiastic and eager, being honest with yourself, being completely free from doubt, and also the ability to practice the Eightfold Noble Path correctly. So now we're really ready to to do the Eightfold Noble Path. And what is that? That's going on from the first 3 fetters into the 4th and the 5th fetter. Now, what are the 4th and the 5th fetter? Well, let's go back to this the second of the Four Noble Truths for a moment, and recognize that the 4th and the 5th fetter are actually that greed and ill will. But now we've got the wisdom, now we've got the tools to deal with it. That's why it's the 3rd and the 4th, or the 4th and the 5th fetter, is because we really can't deal with anything until we can get our hands on it. When the room is dark, the example that I will use is that a black cat is in a completely blackened and darkened room except for the door, and you open the door, you walk into the room, and you close the door, and it is pitch black with a black cat in that room. It's got furniture and all kinds of stuff that you've never been in, and so you can likely stumble around on the furniture. And your job is to catch that black cat. Do you know how to do that? You sit down in the middle of the floor and wait, and the cat will come to you. Either just sit on your lap or scratch your eyes out, but be ready. Okay, so from that perspective, you could see that it would actually be a whole lot easier to catch that cat if we put some light on the subject. If we really knew what the habits of that cat were, knew where, our way around the room, etc., like that. And so most of the people in the world are just sitting in the middle of their life waiting for the black cat of paradise to come sit up on their lap, and it don't happen so well. But if we can catch that cat, if we know how, if we know our way around. And so this is the next fetter is how we practice in the sense of seeing these unwholesome thoughts of greed, and throw it out. Thoughts of ill will, and throw them out. And you can say, well, wait a minute, we're doing that all along. Why do I have to wait to be a sotapan to do that? And then the answer to that question is, duh, of course. We practice all of this stuff in the moment right now. The very first time a student sits down to practice, he can go all the way to sotapan and back by getting rid of those unwholesome thoughts and getting rid of those fetters in the present moment and feeling really good about it, delighted, understanding the Dhamma for a short period of time. And then he falls back into his normal existence, probably while he's still sitting there. And so don't think of these things as a long process, but rather something to look at, that these things are real. Now, these 5 fetters that I've just talked about are normally referred to as rupa, in the sense that they're real. And the arupa fetters, there are 5 of those. And what those are actually in the sense of is they're not real, they're conceptualized. But they're very, very strong within us, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, actual desire, actual greed, actual hunger is a physical sensation that we have to deal with. Okay, that's real. Also, being in real danger, being attacked. We don't like that. So these are the kind of real things, and it's really built deep into our DNA. And so that's why there are so many false positives to where we wind up wanting things we don't need at all, but we want them really badly, and then we feel bad because we can't get it. Or we have false positives of ill will. I don't like a whole lot of stuff because I don't like this, and it's associated with that, and I don't like that too because I don't like this, and now this thing over here, they're pretty well connected, so I don't like it too. All right. An example of that is now within the United States, the Democrats are in the point, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's got the label Republican on it, I hate it. And if I'm a Republican and it's got the Democratic label on it, then I hate it, right? That's because of that association that's not real. So now let's look at the five fetters, the high five, that actually are kind of underlying and kick things off or are shown in certain kinds of behavior. The first one that we can look at is restlessness. That not only is restlessness a fetter, but it's also a hindrance. It's the same thing. Restlessness is restlessness, except that restlessness as a hindrance is the restlessness that we feel right now. The high fetter is the propensity to be restless, which means now we're looking at the deeper stuff like agitation, worry, and fear, because fear is at the bottom line with this. Okay. So now that we've gotten down to that level of fear, where does the fear come from? Let's look at two other high fetters. These are called Arupa Raga and Rupa Raga. And basically, what that means is, do I cling to reality in a certain way, or do I let it go? And we're all going to die. We're all going to have to let stuff go. The question is a matter of timing. But these two fetters are so deeply interrelated, they're really just one fetter. And that is the cycle or the vibration of do I stay or do I go? There's even some songs. I've got an old song about it. It was a Jimmy Durante song that was used in the Conehead movie later. Have you ever had the feeling that you wanted to go, and you wanted to stay, go, stay? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. I go, I stay. Okay, so it's a little bit longer than that, but that's that conflict that we have within ourselves that goes back and forth around that cycle of I like it, I don't like it, she loves me not. It's part of the confusion itself, is this cycle of the fear of staying and the fear of going, but it's all based upon fear. And when that cycle is running, that's where the agitation and the worry and the restlessness come from. They're all interrelated. Now, there's another way that we deal with fear, and that is the Pali word for it is mana, and the word mana actually means the word conceit, but we don't really use it like that. A better way to understand it is competition, that we compete, and we compete in order to win or lose. And each time that you compete, you're already setting up the rule system in advance as to based partly on your feelings as to whether you're going to the outcome of this competition, you're going to win it or you're going to lose it. But we compete so that we can feel pride, or we compete so that we can feel either jealous or envious. Those two words, by the way, are interestingly related. That envy is when that girl has the guy I want, and jealousy is when that girl wants my guy. Do you get the distinction? but they're both pretty closely related. One of them already has it and doesn't want to lose it, and the other one wants it really bad and can't get it. But this is jealousy and envy, which is the other side of pride, and they're both concoctions based upon this competition. So, one of the things that we can start doing when we're out in the world is to recognize that I'm not going to compete with people anymore, that we can be friends instead. They're not enemies, they're not people that we need to go to verbal war for. We don't need to do any arguments. Oh, Andrew left, huh? Okay. So, um, when we have no competition left, then we can relax. When we have no fear left, then we can relax. Well, we could do that again in the first hour of meditation. It doesn't take years to do this, but we do it whenever we need it. So begin to recognize when you get into the sense of you want to compete with somebody, you want to prove them wrong, you want to get your way, you want to compete with them. Because always, regardless of what you do, the outcome is either on one side or the other, pride or jealousy and envy. And so we can recognize, hey, I don't have to compete anymore. That in fact, we can think of it as kind of a mathematical formula, like an equation, they call it. And they have equal, greater than an equal, or just greater than, or less than an equal, right? Have you ever heard that, in fact, in mathematics? Well, we do that with other people. We go around judging other people. I'm better than they are. Or we go around judging people, I'm not as good as they are. And the answer is, let's stop comparing ourselves to other people. That in fact, we don't have to use the equal sign because we're not equal. Things are too complicated. You got to set some criteria here. How many different criteria do we have? Do we have a whole long list of things and I do all of my stuff on that list and you do all of that stuff on your list? How are we going to compare those to see who's the better person? It's impossible. That we're in a state of delusion when we're comparing ourselves to other people. They're who they are and we're who we are. So we need to even take that equal sign out of our equation. In fact, the only sign that I can think of that belongs in there is the heart sign. That I love you. Not I'm better than you or I'm less than you or I'm equal to you. Is no, we're friends here. We're in this together. So this is how we come out of that competition and comparing ourselves and also complaining. Just we stop complaining. Part of the reason we can stop complaining is because we've already figured out that ain't nobody going to help me. That if I'm feeling bad and I want to complain about it, I'm the one who can fix my bad feelings and then I don't have to complain anymore. The example of that is going into some department store or maybe Walmart. They've got a complaint department. And those poor people behind that counter have to deal with people complaining when they return stuff. The question is, can we Dhamma dudes walk into that complaint department, give them the toy that's broken or whatever we're returning happily? Do we have to complain when we're in the complaint department? Huh? Can we? Can we be happy even when we're returning something without having to complain? So this mana, this complaining, competing that we do with other people, we can bring that to a stop once we see it. That in fact, we can see that it does have greed and ill will built into it. And so there's one last fetter. Let's take care of that one, because this is one that's interesting. And that is the last fetter, the 10th fetter, is the fetter of ignorance. Well, wait a minute, we started off with ignorance. We got some knowledge. We got cleaned up. What's all of the ignorance now? The ignorance is basically everything that you don't know that you want to know. Everything that you want to know is, in fact, everything that can be known. We want to know everything. We want to know all about it. And yet human knowledge is too big for one person. It's probably too big for 100 people. That in fact you could go to, let us say, the dean's ball, where all the old elderly college professors are there. And what are they going to do at the dean's ball? They're going to argue with each other because they don't have enough knowledge, and they try to show off. They compete with each other. And because of that, they don't learn. And so all of those college professors, each one of them is a specialist in his own regard, but all of the other 35 or 40 college professors there, they're also in their own world of knowledge. And there's nobody in that room that knows everything that everybody else knows. There's nobody like that. It's not possible. And yet we want it. Every one of us, we hunger and thirst after knowledge. And we finally ever come to the question of, when is it enough? When do I know enough? And the answer to that is when I have enough to be in a state of well-being, when I have enough to be happy, when I have enough to be okay. That's all I need to know. I don't have to be full of knowledge. In fact, I've got way too much knowledge. I know far too much. And when I forget it, when I'm trying to remember a name, then I feel bad. If I never knew Charles Dickens' name in the first place, I wouldn't feel bad because I forgot it. Now, how's that for knowledge? Yeah, knowledge becomes an enemy. That there comes a point in time when we don't need any knowledge. We don't need any more information. That it's okay that we don't know. That in fact, in this place is finally that place where ignorance finally is bliss. It's where the room is absolutely cleaned out. It's still got some dirt in there, but it's clean enough. We don't have to get it perfect. We don't have to know everything. And so these are the 10 fetters. And when we can come to the point that we are under control, or we are in control of these fetters, how do we do that? It's through sati. It's by waking up, knowing what to look for, seeing that stuff, recognizing it, and throwing it out. And so the full 10 fetters, I mean, everybody's got the idea that it takes years to go through the 10 fetters. Well, like 40 years for the first 5, and then the next 5 after that, whoa, lifetimes it takes. No, this all happens in the here and now. These cycles can run pretty fast. We can repeat it over and over again so that all of it comes together in that practice of the Eightfold Noble Path. Then, in fact, that point about waking up and recognizing that I want to know something and it's hard to find and I'm suffering. And I can say, well, right now I don't need to know that. I'll look it up later if I remember. But right now I don't need to know that. I'm okay. But how many of you have done it the other way? You think of something that, oh, if I knew that, I could meditate better. And then off you go trying to figure it out. And you don't even need to know that. We only need to know just a few basic things. That's all we need to know. Enough already. We can't get it all. It's like going to a big, huge buffet at a hotel. And you can say, well, I can have all the food. You can't have all the food you want. Your belly's not big enough. Just like your mind is just not big enough for all the things you want to know. When is it enough? Do you have to actually go to that buffet and get really so much food and so you're feeling really hard? I mean, I have gone into those kind of places when I was a young man with the intention of putting them out of business. I never put anybody out of business. I put myself out of business. I would walk away. Oh, it hurts. I ate too much. But I've done that with knowledge also. And so this is the end of that fetter. The end of all of the fetters is when we feel satisfied. When we feel satisfied, we don't need to know anymore. When we're satisfied, we don't have to worry about coming and going. When we're satisfied, we don't have to compete or compare or complain. Everything is all right already. When we are satisfied, we can go down now to the other fetters, down to the low ones. I don't have to hate people. I'm already satisfied. I don't have to want things that I don't have. I don't want anything. I'm satisfied already. And so at that level, that satisfaction, that sukha, that word is exactly opposite of the word dukkha. This is the opposite. Getting us ourselves into that state of sukha finishes all the fetters immediately. But they're good to look for when you find them, because they're not going to be gone immediately every time. They're going to be there. It's good to look. It's good to pay attention. It's good to recognize that you really want to teach somebody a lesson when they're not about to learn the lesson you want to teach them. Dads do this with their sons. Sons do this with their dads. Students want to teach their teacher something. The teacher wants to teach that kid a lesson. The cops are going around trying to teach people lessons left, right, and center. Our whole society is based upon teaching people a lesson, you know. Those Republicans are working hard to teach those Democrats a lesson. Can we come out of that? That's the better, is to try to teach somebody a lesson. You're going to wind up feeling really bad no matter what. So, those are the 10 fetters. Yes, Andre, go ahead. You got your hand up.
That was yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Everything you mentioned. I have a practical question. For example,
Okay.
what would be the fetter in striving for tranquility, for example, right? So being in a, for example, in a city, and there's lots of going on, and there's lots of people, and et cetera, but really just wanting to be in peace and wanting to I don't know, to go to nature and to a cave and to just meditate. There's still a striving there, but
Okay.
is it rupa or is it arupa, right? Is it, so there is a craving there, right? But
Well,
is it,
there sure is, and back and forth, in fact, because if you really wanted to go out of that city noisy clatter into a quiet place, you'd go. But here you are standing in that noisy clatter wanting to be quiet, and it's not quiet. Okay, so all of this stuff that we've been talking about, there it is in practicality. You want to stay and you want to go. At the ultimate end, by the way, I didn't even bother to mention it. That's life itself. Are you going to live or are you going to die? This is the question that Hamlet asked: to be or not to be? Let's prick ourselves with that poisoned sword and be not be for a while. So, but it's also in there, I don't like this particular life's moment. I want out of here, but I don't. I stay. I don't go. Okay? So you want the quiet, you want to go away from the quiet, but you don't. And so now you're in a state of dissatisfaction, and you want tranquility. And what you could say is that I want something that I can't have right now. I think that, in fact, that what I don't like is all those people out there, where, in fact, what I'm actually doing is that I'm following the rule, thou shalt not be noisy, when we want to be quiet. All right? That those people are out there not following your rule. If you can give up the rule and say, hey, this is a pretty noisy place that I'm in right here, but it's okay with me. I don't have to try to make these people different or try to make myself in a different place. Can I come to be? Is this good enough? Am I satisfied with this noisy environment? Because you're not leaving anyway. Why not just get used to it and satisfied with it? Isn't that amazing? That all you have to do is just get used to it, enjoy it a little bit. begin to listen to it as if it were, in fact, music. There's probably some repetitions in there someplace, some clickety clacks, some butcher hacking meat that you can hear, all kinds of possibilities of what we can hear. But because we don't like it, we want to push it away. We want to be away from it. And because of that, we're now not paying any attention to it. That in fact, this noise situation that you're talking about is exactly the situation that I was talking about in step 4, is that we do not want to see our own problems in our own mind. We want to make it somebody else's problem. We want to make the environment noisy. That's the problem. No, that's not the problem. The problem is I don't like it. And I've got control over whether I like stuff or not. I've been practicing pretty good at it. And I can stand here and say, well, I can handle this. Yeah, you guys noisy away. Party on, folks. I'm okay. That's the attitude that we can develop with that. That we don't have to blame the others. That we can, in fact, recognize the second noble truth is by looking at, hey, this unhappiness is my concoction. I made this stuff up because I've got a rule about noise. And if you throw that rule about noise out, then you don't even hear it as noise. It's just sounds. And we can enjoy that. Or we can not pay attention to it because we're neutral to it one way or the other. We just don't care. And coming into that I don't care attitude, I know that sounds really gross in our society, but that's really what clinging is all about, is caring. And when we stop caring about stuff, we can set it down and we don't have to carry it anymore. But here you are carrying that noise, and you called it noise, and you're carrying it around. You still got it today. How many days ago was it that the noise was there? You're still carrying the noise. And you can not carry anymore about noise and just let it go. Set it down. I don't have to carry their noise around anymore. Not my problem. And then you can just boogie on down that street. You can have a ball. You don't need anything. That because you've got your attitude straightened out. And see, in that regard, now that we've got that point straightened out, it's easy. And now we don't have to go with that come and stay and go, and I don't like it, and what do I go, and I'm not leaving, I'm staying here and hating it. You don't have to keep going through all of that cycle of stuff. You can cut right through that and say, hey, I'm here by my choosing, and I also choose how I relate to this noise. It can either be a friend of mine or it could be my enemy. So the next time you guys get into a noisy situation, reflect upon this. That you don't have to let that noise be noise. It could be music. Up to you. Is
I was
anybody else?
reflecting about this the other day. I'm currently in Sikkim.
Yes, you said you were going.
And traveling around here, it's they have the shared taxis, which is the only way. There's no buses, so they have the huge jeeps, and they're packed like sardines with very little Sikkimese people, and and so when I get in there, it's like 5 people per row, and the rides are very long, and I was really witnessing this discomfort, and then realizing that I make friends with it.
You were the only one in there that was uncomfortable. Everybody else was okay, and they had to put up with this giant among them that's taking up all the room. I mean, people could sit where you were sitting.
Exactly.
But they're good with you. Okay, here's something that I know from real experience about India, is that their boundaries, their spatial boundaries, are very small compared to the Westerner. The Westerner, especially the Americans, they want to keep their distance. It's actually, I think it goes back to the cowboy days, to where we're about to have a gunfight and we want as much distance between us as possible, so it's hard for him to hit me. That I don't want that guy to get too close. Okay, that's in fact what the handshake is all about, is getting close enough and touching him to figure out that he does not have a knife up his sleeve. That's one of the things you should check for. That's why you shake his hand, is so you can check to see is he armed. Okay, so here we go with that mentality and keeping our distance and having our space. And you go to India where they don't even have that concept. They pack in like sardines. It's okay with them. Been that way their whole life. I mean, mom lived in this one room and had 10 kids, so all 11 of them are growing up in that room. They're okay with that. They don't know nothing else. But you walk into that room, you can't even find a place to put one foot after another to get over to the wall. All right. So that's something I learned. That was a hard lesson for me to learn when I was in India. I learned that one. Yeah, let them pack in. They're like sardines, and I can get used to it. They're noisy too, by the way. Yeah, so they're close knit and noisy. So you're in India. You chose to be there. Get used to the way that it is. Figure out what you don't like about it and change that so that you can
Oh, I
enjoy
love
your
it.
experience. It's a lovely place to be. It's just got some stuff that some Westerners we just don't like the way that
I
they
love
do
it.
stuff.
Yeah. Mm.
So anyway, does anybody else have any questions? How about you, David? Anything to say?
I not much, but early in the talk you mentioned confession and Buddhist monasticism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering also, like, is that a thing for lay people too? Like, do they ever like confess things to the monks? Or
That, yes, confessing to the monks, yes, that's a regular occurrence. Yes, that's right. They go to their senior monks. They lay all of their problems out. In fact, that the monkhood has been the family therapist and psychologist here in Thailand for centuries. That in fact, the thing that's quite notable is that psychologists and psychiatrists don't do well here in Thailand because the
Mm,
people generally don't need that level and sophistication of stuff. That they get
mm-hmm.
stuff straightened out at the what? Yes, absolutely. The next
Okay.
thing about the lay people is that also you can live your life as a layman, but still have that dedication to the Dhamma. That's quite not just possible, but I would say that that's the most common thing. In the time of the Buddha, most of the people who came to him went away saying, I will be uh, a supporter of you and live the Dhamma. You will be my teacher for the rest of my life. And that happens often. But almost equally as often, I come for ordination. I'm ready. That in fact, there's several occasions when the guy said that they were ready, and the Buddha says, "Well, go get a robe and a bowl." There's in fact one story of where the guy he was really sharp, and he, I think the circumstances was is that the Buddha asked a farmer if he could stay in the barn, and the guy said that yeah, but there's already somebody staying in the barn, and they spent the night together, and the next morning they had a conversation, and this guy was ready to go, and so the Buddha said, "You go get your robe and you go get your bowl," and he got killed for the day he was out to get his robe and bowl. That's the story in there. So that's one of the things that in the time of the Buddha, all you needed was the robe and the bowl,
Mm,
and that you could ordain. He didn't have any of the rules that are associated with the proper ordination that the Theravadas have developed, with all of that Pali chanting and stuff. That came centuries later.
mm,
But come and see, hey, Pacico, come.
mhm.
That was the ordination. If you got your robe and bowl, come. That was it. But a lot of people were householders in the sense of property owners. They had people that were they were responsible for. They had employees and children and farmland and all of that kind of stuff. And the Buddha's uh, advice to them is to sit out on the porch and let your wife run your business. And you just sit there and just practice Dhamma. You don't need to be a monk. You can be a householder and still just sit here and do nothing. Let them do all the work. That's basically how I live here in Thailand. I've got a family and they do everything. Well, I don't have to do anything. But Tam also knows that I'm pretty much into the Dhamma, and she appreciates that, and so she knows that it works out, and so she's just willing to do it all. Everybody has a wonderful life like that. If the guys who were in families, the men, would just shut up and sit down and let the family run itself without his trying to order people around. You don't have to be a daddy like that.
Mm.
Okay? Just take it easy. That's, by the way, this is in the Digha Nikaya, number Sutta 31, where the advice to the layman is to let your wife run the show. There's also a Mullah Nasruddin story. Mullah Nasruddin, the little book about his stories, is very common in India. It's probably one of the most favorite old joke books that they've got. You might know about it if you've been to India, and Andrew. Do you know about Mullah Nasruddin? Okay, it's got many stories, and one of them is that a group of people came to him for advice about that, and they were saying, well, what do you do? And he says, oh, I only do really important things, and I let the family do all the unimportant stuff. And he says, and then they ask him, oh, what do you mean the most important things you do and the family does all the important stuff? And he says, yeah, I let my wife choose what kind of car we have, what kind of house we live in, what school the kids go to, what kind of clothing they wear, what kind of furniture we have, all the really unimportant stuff. She takes care of the bank account. She does whatever she wants. And they said, well, you do the important. What do you do? And he says, well, I sit here and talk to God. I sit here and commune. I do the really important stuff. I keep the family going by doing nothing. So that's actually part of the Islamic tradition also, of the daddies quitting. Stop running the family. Stop running the family business. And chill out and stay at home.
I've been trying to implement this with my wife, but she's Western, and it's a little
All
bit
the Western
difficult.
wives are. It's no. It really is easy because the Western women, they really do want to be in charge. They've been suppressed. They've had glass ceilings, all kinds of stuff. They even have to wear high-heeled shoes and wear makeup and lipstick. I mean, poor Western women are so trounced. So every time that she says something to you, all you have to do is say, yes, dear, do as you please. It's okay. And just let her go and do what you. If she tries to argue with you, you can't argue with her. You say, you're right. Yeah, I am a stupid buffoon. Let's get over it. And just let her have her way. Your life will just turn beautiful that way. And in fact, I've got several students that are practicing that. And they all agree that it's the best way to have a relationship. It's just like the wife, just do everything she wants to do. And that way, you don't have to do nothing except the Dhamma, because that's all there is. David, did that answer your question well enough?
Yes, very good. Yes, thank you.
Okay, because we could go into some detail, but I think that that's the way of looking at it. Is it doesn't matter whether you ordain or not, but the ordination and in the robes, that's a pretty clear sign that somebody cares enough about the Dhamma to
Mm.
put on to shave their head and put on that robe and live with the other monks and all of that kind of stuff. That's a pretty good indication that he cares about the Dhamma. He cares about it.
Mm.
But you, with your shaved head and your white shirt, that's the same thing. In Thailand, that just shows that you really care about the Dhamma.
Yes, going from retreat to retreats.
That's another indication you really care about the Dhamma.
Yes. It's pretty easy to go ordain, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so and it's pretty easy to disrobe too, so
And ordain again. You see, the Western mentality has the concept of the Catholic Church as an example of the acolyte. He's either got a choice, he's going to do his full ordination or he's out. And so he does his full ordination, and after that, he's in for life. If he gets out, he's excommunicated and all kinds of big troubles. I mean, they really have a bunch of rules about that stuff. But the Buddha had a rule too. Actually, it wasn't a rule, it was an example. The example was set that one monk disrobed and re-robed 7 times. So that's now the official limit of that anybody can robe and disrobe and re-robe again 7 times.
And do you have to have a good reason to disrobe, or is it because maybe you want to go back with your family for a moment?
Okay, I can say several reasons. One, and the one that's officially the one that's is the most positive, is because your family needs you. That even though even the guy sitting on the porch, sometimes he has to get up and go to the field to help his people because it's time to work. Okay, and sometimes the family requests that the monk come and do some family business. I've had that. In fact, it has to do with the request of the mother. The tradition is that the mother, and to a degree your father, but mainly the mother is the one who gives permission for you to ordain. And if she wants you to not be ordained, you come out. You give your mother that level of courtesy, that she's the one. If she needs you out, you come out. If it's okay with her, you go in, then you can go in. By the way, this was all done in writing for me. Achan Po, he really requested. I didn't get ordained until he saw the letter where my mom gave permission. Another way of coming out is when a sweet young thing comes to the back of the place, grabs the monk by his robes, and carries him out of the wat by his pecker. I think you know what I'm talking about. All right. That in fact in Thailand the way that it works is that the Thai women are taught from childhood to respect the monks. Don't go into the private areas. Don't touch a monk. Stay away from them. And that's become a major tradition because that gives the monks the freedom to stay away from the women. Because the women's not, but Western women will come into the wat, see that young Western monk and how beautiful a human being he is. And she says, I want him, he's mine. And about 6 months later, that happens. And I've seen that happen several times. And that's officially the worst reason to come out of the monkhood, is for a relationship. But it happens. Let's see. Oh, there other ways would be like the cops come and get you. You see, in the Catholic Church, when lay people say that guy's a crook and we want him, they will hide the guy. But within Buddhism, if the wrongdoing is kept within the Sangha, then that's so he can be rehabilitated. But if the police or the lay people come after this guy, this guy who's wearing orange robes. He's not really a monk already because he's caused that kind of trouble, and so they'll just let him go. The monks will not argue with lay people if they came. This is one of the reasons why, in order to be ordained, in the first place, you cannot be in debt. You cannot be wanted by the police or anything like that. You've got to be completely free, including from your mom. You've got to be completely free in order to ordain. Okay, so this is another reason why people leave the monkhood. But the worst, I would think, that in fact you could say, even though in society, getting out to getting laid is pretty bad. The real one is when the guy, like in the Sutta number 12 in the Lion's Roar Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, is where this guy goes out, disrobes, and starts trashing the Buddha. Oh, he don't know anything, okay? And so going to another religion or coming out of because you didn't understand the Dhamma at all and you want to go look to see what other religions have, then that's a big no-no in the sense that you probably won't come back. And if he did, he probably won't be invited back because he's not part of the order. But having to leave because of a girl got you, or having to leave because your mother needed you, those are legitimate reasons for getting out of the Sangha. But the most important, or the most legitimate, is for your mom to request that you leave the Sangha for her or the family's benefit or some way. So it's very little to do with Catholic. They've got a different system together. This is much more freedom oriented. And it's good for people to know this in the West because we've got all of these ideas about ordination from the Catholics. So how's this for you, David? Does this help also? With it,
Yes.
It's a swinging door. Yes, you can come in and out. Easy come, easy go.
Yes. There's one Westerner here at this retreat center. He's not present on this retreat. I've been told he was on the last retreat, but he just ordains. He's ordained 3 times already. He just comes for the rains retreat to ordain, and then he disrobes after the rains retreat, and he keeps coming every year.
Yeah, they'll let him do that.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes, in fact, Thais do that. Every year they've got to go work in the field, but there's 3 months or so that they'll, like the Panza, which is basically from sometime in September to sometime in November, that time range. It's very convenient for the Thais to ordain again for Panza. Yeah.
Mm.
So here you've got an example already of what I'm talking about. And it's a Westerner, too. La-di-da. So, Lon, you haven't said much of anything. Are you good with all of this?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the talk. Very, very clear, and everything about the ordination too is very valuable and reassuring in a way, because it can be a bit frightening when thinking about ordination, as this big commitment. Or so it's good that you opened up some some ways of how it's done. Yeah, it's good. Thank you very much.
All right, Andrew, do you have any parting words?
No, thank you very much for the for the talk. The Fetter explanation is very hits the spot, and then the wife advice is also very nice. So thank you so much. It was very, very clarifying.
Okay, excellent. Are you dragging your wife around India? That's no.
No, I'm not dragging. She actually loves India. No, but she's in Dharamsala and then in Goa during the winter. But I tend to run around a bit, and I'm not dragging her with me. So
Good. I was just teasing you. Anyway, guys, it's so good to see you. Thank you all. I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dhammarato.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye. Bye.